Right now it's a home seller's world, and we're just living in it. Let's talk about it. What's going on, everybody? Reno Reed of the Reed team in beautiful Kansas City, where it is still extremely hot the day that I'm filming this. But I'm about to say something that's probably going to blow your mind. Ready? We're living in a seller's market right now. Now, I know I'm being sarcastic, unless you've been living under a rock or you're just now starting to look into the real estate world. It's been like this for a while. In my last video, we had 121 consecutive months of growth in terms of the real estate market. April is likely going to be 122. That's over a decade of consistent growth in the real estate market. Right now, we don't have a huge amount of supply, but we have a ton of people looking to buy for various reasons. Millennials coming to age, Gen Z entering the market, people looking to downsize, people looking to invest, a number of different things, making it a perfect storm for a ton of competition for every house, or nearly every house. So naturally, we as buyers and buyers agents like myself, we're going to see what we can do to leverage as much as we can, to put as much weight behind our offer as we possibly can. But I'm here to tell you that unless you are careful, you could be putting yourselves at a huge disadvantage or a huge disservice down the road by being too aggressive in your concessions. Now, the obvious elephant in the room is the sale price. When you have 20 people, families, businesses, all competing for one property, it's going to drive the price up. Now, one thing to keep in mind is just because you are pre-approved for a certain amount doesn't mean you should be spending a certain amount, right? Now, according to CNBC, approximately 64% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck as of March 8th, 2022. Now, if you're putting yourself in the most tight possible way by maxing out what you can actually spend, you're putting yourself at risk for that by, living paycheck to paycheck. Compare, when people are talking about how much they're spending on their house, 35% of income is what the average American spends on housing costs between their mortgage, their utilities. Now, typical wisdom says that you want to try to be below 30% of your take-home pay in your housing costs. Sometimes it's not realistic, but by maxing out what you can actually afford, according to the bank, you're putting yourself at a potential disadvantage for this down the road. You don't want to be house broke, where after paying all your bills, you don't really have leftover money to go out with friends or to go eat or to go watch movies or do whatever it is that you really enjoy doing that just costs money. Try to avoid being house broke. The next thing that buyers typically give up in terms of trying to put some weight behind their offer are inspections. Now, for my money, the inspection is the best, the single best use of your money during a transaction, right? Now, here in Kansas City, there's 3 typical ways that you see this being done. I still have the right to do inspections, but I'm not going to ask for changes, and I still have the right to back out. That's my favorite, okay? Number 2 is we'll still do inspections, we won't ask for changes, but we can't back out. Or number 3, we're just not going to do inspections altogether. Now, I typically don't ever recommend doing number 3 unless you just do not care, right? Typically, you want to make sure that what you're getting into this house is that it's not going to be a huge project that you weren't looking for. Because the fact of the matter is, we're just a couple people. We can't see everything. That's what the inspector's there for. They do a much more thorough dive. I mean, we're in and out 10, 15, 30 minutes at most usually. The inspector's going to sit down, not really sit down, you're going to be walking through everything for a good couple hours, just looking for every last detail they can possibly find, right? So if you get under contract and you say, yeah, I'll do inspections, but I'm not backing out at all, and I'm not asking for changes, what happens if there's a new roof that's needed, or you have massive issues in your foundation, or just electrical issues that you didn't see? I mean, there's a number of things that can go wrong. Another way that I've seen kind of go about it is kind of in between those first 2 options. I won't ask for changes, but I'm not backing out unless, the roof or something is going to cost me more than $10,000, right? Gives you a little bit more in your arsenal so that if something is completely messed up and you don't want to deal with it, you have that wiggle room to get out. Don't be giving up things that you shouldn't be giving up. And this is something that you're going to have to talk to your agent, or specifically me, if I'm representing you, to find that best balance. The last thing that's really common to see these days is what's called an appraisal gap. So if you are not buying cash, your loan company is going to send somebody out to do an appraisal of the property. Basically, this is them saying, this is what we think the home is worth. Now, if by some stretch of the imagination we have to take that house back from you because you're not making your payments and you get foreclosed on, we want to be sure that we can make our money back on this house by selling it, right? That's the purpose of the appraisal. It's an opinion of value based on comparable properties and things of that nature that have sold in the past. So an appraisal gap is basically us saying, if it doesn't appraise, so if we are under contract at $200,000 and it appraises at 180, typically you have an option to renegotiate that price down to 180 because the bank's not giving you any more than 180, right? An appraisal gap is saying we'll pay you X amount over the appraised value, obviously not exceeding the purchase price. So in this case, offered at 200, appraised at 180. If we had a $5,000 gap on it, we're paying them 185, and 5,000 of that's coming out of your pocket because the bank's not going to give you that 5,000 because they think it's worth 180. If you are not in a good situation for this, if you're planning on leaving in the next couple years, do not do this. You are instantly putting yourself in the hole, in negative equity, theoretically. Now, things can change. Obviously, prices can go up, but prices can also go down. If something out of the ordinary happens, if there's a housing market crash, well, it's not looking very likely, it can still happen. You don't want to be in a position where if you have to move, you're upside down in your house, because then things get really messy. So if you're planning on living here for the rest of your life, then it might not really matter what you pay for it because you're going to be there. You're not too worried about the appraised value. But if you're thinking forward, if you're forward thinking, you probably are going to sell this house at some point. Don't be putting yourself in an unnecessary hole unless it's going to be, 10 years down the road when you're thinking about moving. If it's 3, 4, 5 years, don't do this. Ultimately, it's a balancing act. What can we give, but what can we retain? Now, sellers have the most leverage that they've ever had. It is what it is. But we want to make sure that just because we're wanting this house and we want to put in a strong offer with a bunch of weight behind it, have that conversation with your agent based on your needs and what your wants are. We don't want to be giving up things that are going to be putting us at a disadvantage, not necessarily today, because today we're getting the advantage for it. But 5, 10 years down the road, we don't want to be in these positions where all of a sudden we're having a really bad time because your agent didn't talk to you about the potential risks of these, or that we didn't agree on the way to go forward. A lot of people are short-sighted. So have those conversations with your agent. If you're looking to buy a house, if you're looking for someone to represent you and your best needs, give me a call. I'd be more than happy to help you with that. While you're here, go ahead. I've got a link to my socials down below. Let's connect. But until then, I'll see you guys next time.